Well, this is actually the third year in a row that Indo-Pacific allies have attended the NATO summit. And I just spoke with the National Security Council's Senior Director for Policy, Policy on Defense, I should say, Jason Israel. And he told me that NATO fully recognizes that threats in the Indo-Pacific can no longer be avoided, whether they're threats, missile threats coming from North Korea or support of Russia's war in Ukraine from China. And that is why they have decided to bring these allies in to work together to plan strategies, to coordinate commitments so they continue to have a collective defense.
That's very interesting. What is China saying about this?
Well, China is quite angry. Actually, on Monday, a spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that NATO was overstepping their boundaries, breaching its boundaries, I should say, stoking confrontation and expanding its mandate. Officials here say that China would like nothing more than to keep allies separate because they're easier to bully and to influence that way. But let's be clear here. Getting all 32 members of NATO to call out China was a big deal, and it was specifically focused on Chinese support for Russia in its war against Ukraine. And there are 32 nations that have a broad spectrum of beliefs on China. There's the United States and UK and France who are very forceful against stopping Russian aggression and Chinese aggression writ large. Then there are others like Hungary, who has already come out and said, look, NATO's not going to become an anti-China bloc.
And President Joe Biden has a press conference today. What do the people at the summit expect?
Well, I've got to say here that has been the big buzz. All eyes will be on U.S. President Joe Biden today. He did not have a very good performance in the presidential debate last month, and people are looking to see if he will fumble during this press conference or if he will step up and use this to redeem himself. There are allies who are meeting outside of the summit with some Trump advisors because it is still unclear who's going to be the next U.S. president. But Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg did stress that Trump's biggest concern with NATO was not against NATO itself. It was against NATO allies not funding NATO and not funding defense enough. And he said that this summit should clearly show that NATO allies have stepped up to the plate. 23 of the allies committing 2%, at least 2% of their budget to defense. And collectively, all of Europe, NATO allies in all of Europe have spent at least 2% of GDP on defense. And so he says that should be enough to show Trump that NATO is also committed to its defense, not just the United States alone. I will say, despite that optimism, there are still some concerns here. There was a report out of Politico saying that Trump advisors are kind of pushing an idea that Trump could limit the amount of intel given to NATO allies, and officials here say that that is a horrible idea. Intel is how people plan all of their exercises and strategies, and without sharing intel, that could be a huge problem in the future.